I share with you a little bit about the investment that Home Depot has made and the changes that they made to their supply chain, and it all has to do with the number one thing. It's the willingness to invest the money in what it was they were doing. This, I think, signifies a company that is thinking about where are we going to be in the next 10 or 20 years. Now, this gamble paid off well for Home Depot, and they have really done well with their revenue. They've also done very well with their market share, and it is a direct result of being willing to spend the money. I think that all up and down the levels of companies, size, independent, it doesn't matter how big you are, you have to be willing to spend the money to make the money. And I think one thing that happens, especially in our industry, is that owners are always looking at ways they can trim their expenses instead of being willing to spend more to get more. And that's, I think, going to hold some companies back. So the question for you, to bring everybody in the conversation, if you want to jump in, is what are some of the changes you've seen in trucking over the past few decades, however long you've been in the industry? What have been some good changes you've seen, maybe some bad changes? Where do you think that trucking is going in 10 years? Have you ever worked for a forward-thinking outfit? And what was that like? Do you prefer to work in a fast-paced environment where things are changing rapidly, where you're always doing something new? Or do you prefer to maybe just have an easy-does-it kind of approach where you have a slower pace? Trucking is not for everybody, but there is something for everybody in trucking when you get here. And if you do like that slower pace, well, you do have that opportunity. My fear gets into this, and this is why I bring up the Amazons and the Walmarts. The big get bigger. The companies that have the ability to leverage assets and borrow against them and grow their business, they gobble up a lot. They take a lot of the market. It makes it very hard then for smaller upstart type companies to really represent a product. In trucking, that is freight movement. It would be very hard for carriers to get started. And I'm a dreamer. I like the idea of the entrepreneurial spirit, starting with one truck or two trucks and building a business that will have success. So just having an open conversation about it. If you want in, 8888 RoadDog, 888-876-2336. What's going to be the future of pay for trucking? Do you have a thought on that? Let's go ahead and take some more phone calls. I got more stories to share with you as well. Amazon versus Walmart. Oof, this is going to be an epic battle royale for sure. Icebox is next in Colorado. Icebox, welcome, sir.
What up, Casey? All
Just
right,
chilling.
Good show.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I think we are in a trucking revolution or renaissance or something, because like there's just so much going on right now. There's, you know, like over the years, I mean, you know, I started back in 2006, and I can tell you from then to now, there's been so many changes on the driver level, on the industry level, you know, all around, and it's been pretty amazing. I think one of the happier things on the driver level I like is, you know, some of the apps that we have that make it a lot easier out here nowadays. You know, back in 2006, we didn't have smartphones. You know, we had to actually find our way around. Then GPS came around and everything. You know, but then we got Google Earth, and we could actually see the shipping, you know, door that we have to go to on Google Earth, you know, which I think is pretty amazing. And, you know, as far as like the Home Depot thing, you know, Forward Air, actually, you know, have account with some of the stuff. Forward Air actually bought out Lendstar, which does their home deliveries and stuff. So even the trucking companies are making moves along with the big companies like Home Depot and Walmart and Amazon and stuff like that.
Right.
So I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that going on. So yeah, a lot of neat stuff. You know, as far as pay goes, I'm not an hourly guy. You know, like I got into trucking because I wanted to be paid for, you know, my productivity because I'm such a hard worker. And I think a lot of guys out there that feel the same way as me like that would probably agree. But there's so many of them out there nowadays that want to get paid by the hour just because of some of these companies setting their own regulations. Like, you don't even have like DOT regulations. You got companies setting their own rules on top of the DOT and stuff, which is slowing down the drivers even more. Now, you know, here recently, a lot of the companies have boosted their speeds back up a little bit, so that's been kind of good for them. But yeah, definitely a lot of good stuff, man.
So when you talk about technology, I was thinking back about Shalico's call about how everything has become much more easy for you from a navigational standpoint, from a record keeping standpoint, and all. But when you talk about the changes you've seen, what do you think have been some of the biggest changes other than technology? In your experience, what do you think some of those are?
Well, I would say probably on top of my head, I would say just the way we get treated. Now, with that, it's a little different because, like, companies are treating us better, but the warehouses are treating us worse. You know, some of these guys that have been out here for a while, you know, they might see. I used to work at a warehouse, and, you know, the truck drivers were treated like kings, you know, and even the warehouse workers, like, looked up to them because, you know, I mean, at the time, you know, they had their own lounge, which was amazing. Ours was crappy at the warehouse when I worked at the warehouse. But the truckers said it's like, yeah, man. But
dude, I've been in one. I've been in one that was probably the crappiest of the crap. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite nowadays. Now the truck drivers get we get a cage at Amazon. When you walk in the door, you're in a cage like a little monkey, you know? And that's what we get nowadays. And yeah,
that's right.
So, I mean, stuff like that, it's crazy how much stuff has actually turned around. Some of it's been for the better, some of it's been for the worse. But, I mean, you know, trucking is always ever evolving, right?
Yeah, that's why we talk about it. So here's some, I guess, an evolution of my own thought process of where I think we can agree on something, Icebox. And I'm going to ask you a question. With regard to how your company's ownership approaches its relationship with shippers, if there were a controversial situation with your owner, do you feel that he would side on the shipper side or the driver side?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
It has to do with this. It has to do with relationships. Do you feel as if company ownership in our industry is more worried about maintaining the relationship with a company that they're doing business for or their driver?
No, actually, I think it's the driver. My company personally, which is kind of cool, we actually have a female owner, so shout out to the ladies out there. Yeah, my company actually chooses the drivers. I mean, I've been in some situations and stuff. They've taken my side regardless, and a lot of that's just because of driver retention right now. I mean, you know, if you call some of these like big trucking companies, when you call in, instead of it being like, oh hey, how can we help you? You know, the customer. It's no like, hey, call us and let's get you on as a driver. That's the first thing that they're talking about when you call in some of these companies. So, yeah, I think it's the driver.
Yeah, okay, well, that's good. I have talked with a lot of great executives in the trucking industry, and I've seen firsthand some of them and how they do work with drivers. But I think that if you're looking at the 60,000-foot view and you're looking down on the trucking industry, that would be a very important question to ask, because there's always going to be problems between companies. Icebox, thank you for your call. There's always going to be problems between businesses. Trucking businesses have relationships with the shippers, and the shippers are going to be demanding certain things from trucking companies. It's a negotiation. They're going to want to try to drive their expenses down, and then the company has to be willing to be strong and hold fast on that. But there's always, in any relationship, going to be some challenging times. And in trucking, I know that just from hearing dispatchers and load planners and brokers and how they work with people, it all boils down to, I think, that question. Will company owners side with a shipper or side with their driver in any dispute? And I think that you can get a good feeling for who is the most important person or how a company owner feels about that. I'm